Hero, I don't know if you are as excited about today's show as I am, but somehow I doubt it, because today we're going to mix it up a little bit. And today, instead of having one guest, we are going to have three. We're going to have three rabbis from different parts of the Jewish world who have different kinds of jobs in teaching Torah. And today, each of these three rabbis is going to share with you their favorite fall holiday.
I think I would have to say Sukkot.
I think the other holidays are great, but Sukkot's got to be my favorite.
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
Solidly.
I'm not going to tell the other ones. Are you sure you're going to stick with that answer? If you'd like to know more about why these are their favorite holidays and why Rosh Hashanah gets no love, keep listening, because we're going to learn all that after this bass.
Welcome to the Jewcurious Show, where learning about Judaism and getting to know Jewish people can help you live a life of meaning, joy, human connection, and personal growth. And now your host, Rabbi John Carrier.
Thank you, Ron, for that great introduction. Thank you, Joey, for that great introduction music. I hope you heard last week's episode where we talked to Joey Weissenberg, who is responsible for our intro music, but so much more. If you haven't heard that episode, I highly recommend you check that out, but later, because this is important. Now, you may have noticed, and if you haven't noticed, I hate to be the one to point it out to you, that summer is winding down, that fall is creeping up upon us. I think my kids have about 2 more weeks until school starts. Now, mind you, we live in sunny Southern California, so the seasons don't really change that much, but we are running out of fun summertime. I'll tell you that. We're going to be doing less grilling, less pool time before you know it. And then fall is upon us. The palm trees out here don't really change color, but we do notice an advent of holidays, because if you are Jewish or if you are curious about Judaism, you know that in the fall we have like an entire month of holidays, and it starts with Rosh Hashanah. It actually starts a little bit before that with Slichot and with Elul, and then there's Rosh Hashanah, and then there's Yom Kippur, and then there is Sukkot. And that's like a bunch of days, and then there's a couple of days tacked on the end of that. It is just a holiday bonanza. And I may be getting ahead of myself, but I thought it's important that we start talking about this so that you have some time to be fully prepared for the high holidays when they get here. And that's important because I've always found that my experience of these fall holidays has been better the more I've known about them, the more I understand what's going on, the more I know what page we're on, the more I'm familiar with the prayers and the music and the customs. And I don't have to worry about that kind of entry-level stuff. I could really just enjoy the holidays for what they are. And because I have appreciated that experience so much, I want to create that experience for you and for people just like you. And that's why, again, if you missed last week's episode, you may not know that today, we are beginning the Jewish Holidays in the Fall 31-day challenge. And what this challenge entails is that you join us for this. That involves clicking on a link in the show notes, and I'll talk more about that later. But if you click on that link in the show notes and you join this challenge, then you are going to get at least 2 things, 3 things. Let's say 3 things. The first thing you're going to get is a downloadable schedule of all the Jewish holidays for the whole year with a description of each of those holidays. This is something that I didn't talk about last week that I'm introducing this week. But don't worry if you've already signed up, I'll send that to you so you have it as well. But if you click on that link to join this challenge, you will receive the entire year's worth of holidays, when they are, what they are, where they come from, and what they do for us. You'll get that right away. And then starting today, you will be notified about a new video on YouTube every single day talking about some aspect of the fall Jewish holidays. Today, we're going to get kind of an overview of those holidays, why they are, what they are, etc. And that 31-day series of daily videos begins today. So that's the second thing you get. The first thing you get is a calendar of the holidays for the whole year. The second thing you get is a daily, short, accessible, instructional video on some aspect of the fall Jewish holidays. And then the third thing you get is if you join this challenge, you are automatically entered to win a drawing that we're doing. And that drawing is the possibility of having your very own starter Jewish library. Now, as a rabbi, I'm kind of in the business of recommending books to people, of people who are curious about Judaism, people who are just starting out, whether they're converting, whether they're coming back for the first time in a while. Some people are looking for books as a way in. So I have handpicked 6 books that I recommend most highly, covering aspects of Jewish prayer, covering aspects of the meaning of the holidays and Jewish literacy. What do you need to know to be a part of the Jewish community? And of course, this would not be complete without recipes. So there's even a cookbook in there. Now, I put together a starter Jewish library for 3 people. So if you enter this challenge, you could be one of 3 people who wins this complete library of 6 books. And complete, you may ask, 6 books, really? That's a library? It's a lot to get you started, because these are the books that I recommend the most to people who are getting started with understanding what it means to follow Jewish traditions and be a part of the Jewish community. So if you're already chomping at the bit to join this challenge, if you like the idea of receiving a calendar with a description and explanation of all the holidays, if you like the idea of getting 31 consecutive days of learning on YouTube, and if you like the idea of possibly winning a starter Jewish library, then you can go right now. You can put this on pause, go to your computer and go to jewcurious.show/challenge, and then you'll get hooked up with everything you need to do to join the challenge. You could do that now, or you could do that later, because we have something important to do right now. That is, I want to introduce to you 3 of my friends, 3 of my colleagues, 3 of my teachers who are going to share with you their own personal reflections on these Jewish holidays in the fall. These are 3 rabbis who have very different jobs in the Jewish world, but all of them have taught me something, and I share them because I think they're going to teach you something as well. The first is Rabbi Sheryl Parrots, who's one of the deans of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, who is my teacher, who is my family's personal rabbi. The next is going to be Rabbi Jeremy Marquise, a friend of mine who is a congregational rabbi in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the third, you may have already heard of before. He's already been on this podcast. In fact, his episode was the most popular, most downloaded episode we've had so far, and that is Rabbi Adam Greenwald of the Miller Introduction to Judaism program. So I'm going to step away from the microphone for a little bit. I'm going to step away and let them talk, because each of these people has a powerful personal story to share about which of these holidays is their favorite, why it's their favorite, some personal childhood memories they have of these holidays. It's not just rabbis, giving you advice and telling you what to do. They are really opening up here to let you know what means the most to them. And they'll also give some advice as to how you might be able to approach these holidays if it's your first time or the first time in a while, how you can get the most out of it. So without further ado, let's hear from Rabbi Sheryl Parrots of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, my rabbi, my teacher, and now your teacher as well. I am speaking with Rabbi Sheryl Parrots, who is my teacher, has been my dean, my mentor, and also I'll say my family rabbi. This is every rabbi needs a rabbi. And I also learned many years ago that when you're a rabbi, you can't be your own family's rabbi. Just doesn't work for a variety of reasons, especially if your family says, I'm really having some family problems, especially with John. So my wife considers Rabbi Parrots her personal rabbi, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about the high holidays. So I want to ask you, and this is a sensitive question because people are going to have strong opinions about this. Among Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, do you have a personal favorite? And I promise I won't tell the other holidays which you picked.
Well, So I've been thinking about this question, and I have to say, like, I'm a little bit of a nerd because I think I like all the holidays and appreciate each one for what it is. But I'm going to give you an answer because that's what you asked for.
Desert island. So you could only take one holiday with you. What would you do?
Right. I think I would have to say Sukkot. And here's why I want to say Sukkot today. Because after all the introspection of the 10 days of repentance, of Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Kippur, you might expect that you would be living with some heaviness as you think about like your own shortcomings and perhaps some hope about what you need to do to fix that. But then the tradition says 5 days later, okay, get out of yourself, get out of your house and go and celebrate. And that's really what the commandment is for Sukkot. V'samachta v'chagecha. Go celebrate, right? Be happy no matter what's happening. Go and sit in the sukkah and make it special and enjoy. And I think that environment, especially living in Southern California, is so conducive to exactly doing that. When you get outside and you enjoy the weather at that time of year and you enjoy the company of good friends and family and the food and the rituals and the smells and everything else of the sukkah. So I have to say Sukkot today.
I love that answer. And the reason I love that answer is because I've had this kind of deeper question myself. And that is, why are all these things kind of jammed together? Like, first off, we have like a whole month of holidays, right? We have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur 10 days apart. And then we have Sukkot, and Sukkot lasts for 7 days plus, a little bit additional at the end with Shmini Atzeret. And so by the time and we start a little bit before Rosh Hashanah with Slichot. And so all told, when you get the calendar from your synagogue, if you go to a synagogue, it's like a month of stuff. And I thought, okay, why do we jam all this stuff together like that? And the simple answer is, well, it's in the Torah, right? It says right there, okay, on the first day of Tishrei, you do this, on the 10th day, and then the 15th day for 8 days. And so the simple answer is, okay, because God said so, right?
Right.
But it just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And so I've always wondered why we do this. And I thought, well, maybe there's a pragmatic reason to it. Like, okay, as long as everybody's together.
Right.
Right. While we've got your attention, if you were going to come to Sukkot, to this pilgrimage festival, come a little early and say you're sorry about stuff.
Right. No,
because you're
it's
in the opposite. and I love this answer because it's like, it really speaks to the necessities of human psychology. For the same reason, I learned this from Rabbi Feinstein, but I've heard in other sources, like why we do Tisha B'Av,
right?
Where we take, if we celebrated, if we remembered historical events of suffering on the day they actually occurred, we would literally never stop suffering.
Right.
Right? We could probably find 365 days of stuff to be sad about. But there's this kind of hesed, there's this kindness to consolidating it into one day. And this observation that you made that, okay, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's some time for celebration, it's some time for introspection, but it can be very heavy, right? Because you're doing real powerful inner work. And then 4 or 5 days later, let's party.
Yeah, I mean, if I could, John, there's even I think a bigger message in that from the rabbis, because they ask the question of what happens if you're supposed to sit in the sukkah and 2 of the walls come crumbling down. It rains and the walls fall down, or you didn't construct it very well and they just sort of fall on you. And what they're asking is, can you still say the blessings? And the blessings are about fulfilling the commandment, but also about the celebration. Because if I'm no longer sitting in a sukkah, can I still say the blessing of sitting in a sukkah? And they end up saying the power of celebration and that psychology, as you're calling it, is so important that even if 2 walls of the sukkah come crumbling down, you still sit in the sukkah and celebrate, meaning you still say the blessings and you recognize the power of that moment. And that, I think, is a great metaphor for life, too. That when we think that two of the walls of our life are crumbling down, we still sit and have the option of choosing to celebrate.
I love that. I love that. It's like, so we've made this appointment with joy.
Yeah.
It's like after making an appointment with seriousness and self-evaluation and asking for forgiveness, we have this appointment with joy. And it's so important that we keep that appointment. You know, it's like, let's say I really need to go to the, this is a bad metaphor, but I'll say it anyway. I really need to go to the dentist, right?
Yeah.
Because I need that in the same way, like I need joy. Yeah. And even if the setting isn't perfect, you still get to have the joy, because it's not about the tent. It's not about this structure. It's about the joy that you are supposed to engender inside the structure. And so if the structure isn't perfect, you can still have that celebration.
Yeah. And I think it's that ability to say, I can choose to celebrate no matter what's happening, I think is at the root of how we maintain our sense of hope as a people, and how we maintain that reputation that Jews are a people who always hold on to hope. That's
awesome. Thank you for that. So I want to make it a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
Do you have some particular early memories of this holiday, or really good memories of this holiday, celebrating it while you were growing up? What are your earliest memories, and maybe what are your best memories of Sukkot?
So first I have to say that the biggest thing for me, the biggest association of Sukkot is always smells. The smell of the etrog, the citron fruit that we use, the smell of the pine needles from the top of the sukkah, if that's what you use, or other leaves. Just being outside, the smell of the myrtle. I mean, each piece of the lulav comes from a different plant, one of which has no smell, others that have different smells. And so that's always something I've remembered. Like, I didn't grow up in Southern California, so the idea that you could just walk out of your house and always smell something fragrant and beautiful was sort of foreign to me, being from Texas, which I think you'll understand because you're also from Texas. And yeah, and in the cities, you don't exactly walk out of your house and say, oh, I smell all this great stuff in nature today.
When I visited New York, I've literally never said that.
Yes. So the smells have always been a big association for me. And when I was growing up, we didn't necessarily, we didn't build a sukkah. I wish we had. But what I do remember is we always made it a point to go to one of the sukkah programs at the synagogue. So there was always a chance to sit in the sukkah. And I remember sitting in the sukkah with my parents and with my siblings, of which I have a whole slew of them, and also with our community. And it was just a really special time. And I think that's what, for me, were the kernels of what it meant to create community at the times of the holidays in that kind of social and cultural way.
For somebody who hasn't experienced this before, maybe this is the first year they're going to either build a sukkah or go to a Sukkot program at a synagogue or a community center. What's something important for them to understand going in order to get the most out of this experience?
You know, the thing is that Judaism has so many rituals, and we can focus on the rituals just in terms of what am I supposed to do? What's the behavior I'm supposed to enact? What's the...
Am I being right or wrong right now?
Yeah. And I think if you only experience it on that level, you've missed the boat. Because for me, there are two pieces that I think are really important in what the purpose of the ritual is. The first is, how do I bring my entire self into it? So I love that Sukkot actually asks us to bring in our senses and to bring in our bodies and to bring in a sense of purpose. But I also love to say, what's the value behind that? So when you look at the Sukkah and you say, get out of your house and sit in this temporary dwelling place, it actually focuses us on a value. And that value is the fragility of structures, the fragility of life, the fragility of our own being. And so for me, I would hope that a person new to this would get to step in and participate in the behaviors, but also to be intentional about what it can mean for them if they invest and think about the larger picture.
I'm trying to unpack that a little bit. So what does that look like? Let's say I'm going to a sukkah for the first time and I'm sitting in there and I'm like, okay, this is kind of a weird tent. I would never build it this way.
Right.
And there's some lawn clippings above me. and
right.
I think you observed it, it's different in different places. When I was in Minneapolis, it was about being cold.
Yeah.
Because in Los Angeles, Sukkot can be difficult because it's too hot sometimes by that time in September or October. And in Minneapolis, what people often do is they'll build a sukkah in their driveway so that one of the walls can be open to the garage, which is heated. If that's not the case, you go in there and you eat dinner and people are wearing winter coats and mittens and eating the soup as fast as they can before it gets cold. So let's say I'm walking into the sukkah for the first time.
Yeah.
What do I need to notice? What do I need to be thinking about?
So when you walk into the sukkah, I would say first, look at the walls, look at how people have decorated. What does that tell you about their character, about their joy, about who you're spending time with? I think it also means looking up in the sukkah and saying, not just, oh, that's wood or it's metal or there's bamboo or there's leaves, but try to play hide and seek and look through the cracks to actually look up at the sky and be mindful and see the stars and see the moon and feel like you're part of something really small and something really vast. And it means that while you're doing that, and you have the opportunity to hold the lulav and the etrog, the two biggest symbols of the holiday that we shake, to smell them, to see them, to put them together, to, when you put it down, put your hands to your mouth and or to your nose, I should say, really, and see that you can still smell the etrog and that it stays on your hands and that that's something that stays with you. And so that's really, for me, a lot of that. And then to be able to say, wow, how lucky am I that I have this opportunity and that by stepping out of my permanent home into a temporary home, I am able to acknowledge that and realize it, which hopefully then leads me to think mindfully about how lucky I am to have a permanent home also, because there's lots of people who don't.
That's amazing. Well, I want to ask one last question before we go, and that is if you have a favorite book that you recommend or other resource, could be a movie or a book that can help people get a handle on all of the high holidays. Is there a favorite high holiday book that you recommend to people?
Yeah. So I have two to recommend. One is more of a child's book, but I think it can be read as an adult. It was a series that I used to read when I was a kid called Katonton. It's K''Ton'. And it was this character who sort of traced you through Jewish life and Jewish holidays. And so when you say, what are the associations I have? He's one of them, Katonton. Okay. But the book that I would also recommend is my friend and colleague, Rabbi Paul Steinberg, did a whole series on the Jewish holidays called The Jewish Holidays. And this one is the Fall Holidays edition. There's also one for other holidays, but that one, he has in that book a collection of different thoughts on what the meaning of the holidays are by different rabbis, a different collection of stories, collections of the ritual, an understanding of the ritual. And it's just sort of, you can pick and choose which parts you might want to read or read it from cover to cover. And I think it's a great way to get intention and meaning out of the holidays, all of them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate I always learn so much from you. And so all the more Thanks, so I appreciate that the people listening to this podcast can learn from you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And look forward to many more from you.
That was so dope hearing from my teacher, Rabbi Sheryl Parrots, fellow Texan, I can say. I don't know if I have any Texas listeners to this, but if you heard my conversation with Rabbi Rebecca Sirbu a couple of episodes back, that I'm a proud son of the Republic, and I appreciate any opportunity to talk to and share the wisdom of a fellow Texan. But now we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to go from an academic rabbi, rather a teacher, to other teachers and go to a rabbi who is in the trenches, as it were, who is a rabbi in a congregation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is a good friend of mine. We do a lot of cool work together digitally online because he's got this great website called The Rabbi's Manual, where he's actually teaching other rabbis how to be more effective leaders. But at the same time, he's working in a congregation with other people who are involved in a synagogue. His name is Rabbi Jeremy Marquise, and I'm going to step back and let him talk to you because he's got a lot to share, including something in common with Rabbi Sheryl Parrots. Take it away, Rabbi Marquise. Now up to the microphone is my friend, my colleague, my teacher, Rabbi Jeremy Marquise. Jeremy Marquise, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell me where you're from.
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, but I now live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And what do you do in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
I work as the director of Derech, which is our targeted programming arm, and the director of Youth Tefillah, our Shabbat and holiday programming for kids and families at Congregation Beth Shalom here in Pittsburgh in Squirrel Hill.
Okay, so do you say Squirrelville?
Squirrel Hill, it's one of the Jewish neighborhoods here in Pittsburgh. It's really fascinating. It has a 100-year history plus of being a Jewish neighborhood, which is pretty rare in the country.
That's fantastic. And so just to sum up, you're a rabbi at a synagogue doing all sorts of things for people who come to a synagogue, God willing, on a regular basis.
Basically, I like to say from zero to grandparent.
From zero to grandparent. That's awesome. So I want to, but aside from your professional responsibilities, I want to get personal here. And I'm going to ask you a deeply personal and possibly controversial question. And that is between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, do you have a favorite? And I promise I won't tell the other holidays which you picked.
I am, if I had to choose, I would choose Sukkot. I think the other holidays are great, but Sukkot's got to be my favorite.
Why is that?
In particular, because of where Sukkot lives in kind of the family of holidays of that part of the year. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are very serious. There's a lot of time spent in synagogue traditionally. That comes right after the month of Elul, which is a very introspective month. And then after all of that, we have Sukkot. And Sukkot is all about relaxing and hanging out outside in the sukkah and just having a good time. It is solely a joyous holiday. It's called Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. And I love that. And that works for me.
That's awesome. Now, there was another rabbi I talked to recently, Rabbi Sheryl Parrots, who had the same answer. And what fascinates me about this answer is that it's my impression that when people think about Jewish holidays in the fall, they think about Rosh Hashanah and they think about Yom Kippur, and they don't necessarily think about Sukkot. And when I've been a part of synagogues, when I've been a rabbi at a synagogue, just by sheer numbers of people who show up, people show up for Rosh Hashanah, people show up for Yom Kippur, and not so much for Sukkot. And yet I'm hearing from, I've heard a lot of rabbis who say Sukkot is absolutely their favorite holiday. And not just this year, but like 2,000 years ago in the Talmud, when they talked about Sukkot, they just called it Hechag, like the holiday. And if somebody said, hey, what are you doing for the holiday? Everybody knew that they were talking about Sukkot because that was just the best. So help me understand maybe this disconnect, or like, what is it about Sukkot that people aren't getting, that maybe they don't know about it, or what should people know about it to give it a shot?
So I think what people often miss about Sukkot is that it comes at the end, right? People come for Rosh Hashanah, they come for Yom Kippur, they spend hours in synagogue, and they're burnt out. They're burnt out at the end of that season. They don't want to go to synagogue anymore. And one of the best parts about Sukkot is it really is something that you can do at home. It's something that you can do with your family. Yes, of course, there's a synagogue component to it, but it's unlike those other holidays. I think in addition to that is, unlike most Jewish holidays, Sukkot is really physical. There's something to hold, there's something to carry and to shake. There's somewhere you're going every day. It's there. You have to build something. Judaism has a tendency to be really heady, but Sukkot, and there's a handful of other mitzvahs like this, but Sukkot is really, really physical. And therefore, to me, it stands out. And I think that's probably why people forget about it, is because it's so different than these other holidays.
Right. I think I want to bring back Sukkot as like fall Passover, because Passover is super duper popular, and it's like fall Passover, but you don't have to clean your house so much.
Not only that, you can leave your house entirely.
Right. You can make a little like tree fort in your backyard, and I think of it as like it reaches to that inner impulse of making a fort out of couch cushions. Only you can do it in your backyard, and you're doing a mitzvah at the same time, and you don't have to clean out your cupboard or like buy extra expensive meat. Yeah.
When we were looking for apartments, pretty much anytime I've looked for an apartment, the first question I'm always asking is, where is the sukkah going to go? For me, it is essential to thinking about how my Jewish year works.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's where actually synagogues do a lot of service to people, is like if you have an apartment your homestead is such that you can't build something out in a backyard, if you don't, and you might not even have a backyard, then you can go have the same experience at a synagogue that has space to build this thing and get together with community that way. Now, do you have any particular personal memories of Sukkot, maybe when you were a child or later, some really great memories of celebrating Sukkot? Like, make this real for me.
Yeah. Growing up, we had, in Portland, we had this really robust, large sukkah with 2x4s and really a lot of wood. And it doesn't exist any longer other than in pictures and in memories. Mm-hmm. But what was so special about it was that every year we would add something new to it. And because it was made of wood, we every year we would draw, or we would add something to the physical sukkah walls themselves. It had our names on them, and it had memories. And so every year you could think about what last year was like, what the year before was like. And that was something that is deeply meaningful for me. And it is one of my kind of important Jewish memories growing up. And that picture probably crosses my eyes every couple of years or every couple of months, and brings me really just warm memories of sitting outside, eating dinner on the deck, under the sukkah, under the stars. I think that was one of my earliest and probably best memories of Sukkot. Later, when I had a home of my own and I was building my own Sukkot, my last couple of years in Los Angeles while in rabbinical school, as an example of that, it was amazing to have friends come over to my house and spend hours just hanging out in the sukkah. Being able to spend that time in the afternoon on a Friday, right before Shabbat, where the rest of the world is so crazy trying to get everything done. I was hanging out in my sukkah, relaxing, having a glass of wine. That to me is just a really special part of the holiday. It's just the sense of relaxation and specific experiences when I lived in X and YZ city. Last year, we had my family and my neighbor's family over in our sukkah. I live in a duplex, and it was just awesome to have people who had never met each other, who didn't know each other, sitting in the sukkah together. Sukkot to me is about inviting and being welcoming. And if you look deep into the laws and the mystical meanings of the Sukkot, it's really about being in relationship and in community. And so having someone new into my sukkah every year makes it special.
When I hear people talk about the Sukkot, the sukkahs that they build and the things that they add to it, and people really make these things personal, having lived in a couple of different worlds religiously, and knowing that some of my listeners are people who decorate Christmas trees every year, for me, this is the closest that Jews come to that experience of decorating a Christmas tree in a couple of different ways. One, it's like every family that does Christmas trees does them a little bit differently, right? They're like the thing in common, there's a tree, but it could be a different kind of tree. There's a live tree or a plastic tree or a big tree or a small tree. And then how people decorate them are, some people only use colored lights. Some people only use white lights. And every family that I know has some collection of ornaments that tell the family history. Like, here's the kind of crusty looking ornament that somebody made in the third grade and a project. And I've seen Sukkot decorations the same way. It's like some of the decorations are decorations that you use from year to year. Some of the decorations are things that you make that year for the sukkah. And as they accumulate over time, it tells the history of that family or the history of that community that's building it, decorating it with very personal items and accumulating those personal items over time, then tells the family story from year to year, as much as it's connecting to that family story to the longer Jewish story that goes all the way back to the time when we were wandering in the wilderness, living in temporary structures.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think part of the tension around this idea of temporary shelters is an important and essential part of Sukkot, right? It's that I'm a part of this story and this narrative that has lasted for thousands of years. And my own sense of being secure in that or not secure in that, right? And that whole tension around being in a permanent home and a temporary home and living in different places and having these traditions to carry you through is, to me, is also a part of the Sukkot story. That tension between those two and being a part of the story and making the story anew. For me, Sukkot is absolutely wrapped in some of those ideas.
I want to give a confession that of the people that I've talked to about the holidays lately and asked who their favorite was, nobody has said Rosh Hashanah. I'm sorry, Rosh Hashanah. I don't know what you did wrong, but what I do want to pull out is what's something that you love about Rosh Hashanah, even if it's not your favorite holiday.
I love the idea of starting over. It is something that is important to me in every part of my life. It's the ability to make a mistake and start over. It's the ability to say something didn't go the way I wanted it to and start over. And for me, Rosh Hashanah takes that absolutely essential place in my life where I can say, okay, I'm starting over, right? The symbolism that the world is being created. This is the same day that the world was created. I'm a firm believer in science, so this is about a metaphor. The idea that actually creation is starting anew, and so am I, is one of my favorite parts of Rosh Hashanah. And one of the ways that we do that, there's a great tradition of using physical symbols, which have like a play on words, all about starting over or New Year's. There's one about fish heads, about being you want to be at the front of the animal versus the end of the animal, whatever. There's something with carrots and all sorts of stuff. It's worth looking up. That idea of starting over and how we celebrate that with honey and fruit and trying new things. And all of that, to me, is what I love about Rosh Hashanah. With my congregation right now, we are learning the Tractate of Talmud on Rosh Hashanah. There are many Rosh Hashanahs in the year, but only one Rosh Hashanah do we celebrate the creation of the world and what it really means for us to be partners in that and to be starting over and to be kind of, again, like Sukkot, part of this story.
Now, speaking, you mentioned a book called the Talmud, which is that a book? It's like a library. It's like a whole library. It's a book like the Encyclopedia Britannica is a book. But talking about Jewish literature, do you have a favorite book that you recommend to people who are learning about these holidays? Say, somebody is new to Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Sukkot, and they said, Rabbi, what's a book that you would recommend to me to read?
So I think it depends a little on what people are looking for. So there are definitely books out there with the technical rules of how to do X, Y, and Z. But I think in terms of making meaning and taking these holidays personally and seriously, one of the books that I love, and every couple of years I try and reread it, is called This Is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared by Rabbi Alan Liu. And I think it's probably the best title of any book I've ever read because it's true. This is real and we are completely unprepared. And what this book does is go through, starting in the month of Elul, which precedes Rosh Hashanah, all the way through Simchat Torah, which is at the end of Sukkot, basically short essays, it's not short, but essays on each of these holidays and the personal experiences of Rabbi Liu and ways that these can be meaningful. In fact, a number of years ago, I read this book while in services. It was Yom Kippur in the morning, and I was reading the Yom Kippur section. I found it really meaningful and really offered new ways of looking at the holidays, as well as my own reflective experience while sitting there in the shul. In addition, just if I'm going to throw out recommendations, there is a great Israeli movie about Sukkot, since we were talking about Sukkot, a great movie called Ushpizin, about a couple and guests and buying etrogs, which are one of the fruits and symbols of Sukkot. It's a hilarious movie, an opportunity to explore Israel and Israeli stories and Jewish holidays all wrapped in one. Phenomenal movie and something worth watching to learn a little bit more of the craziness of Sukkot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I recommend I recommend that movie to absolutely everybody, whether or not you're interested in Sukkot. It'll probably have more for you if you are interested in Sukkot. It gets into the religious ritual aspects of the holiday, but also the profound polarity of Israeli culture, or the diversity of Israeli culture, because it's about a deeply religious person who wasn't always deeply religious, right? He has turned his life around and become a very religious guy. And then some of his buddies that he used to run around with are on holiday release from prison and they visit his sukkah. And so it's this clashing of worlds, which it never really occurred to me before, but now I'm thinking that this actually brings in the other holidays as well, because this guy's life is all about tshuva. It's all about self-improvement. It's all about starting anew and still having a relationship with his old life as well. And Sukkot then comes to integrate those things in hilarious, tragic, in deeply beautiful ways, I think. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, because that's a great movie, as well as this Alan Liu book that I know is very popular among rabbis, but not just rabbis. You don't have to be a rabbi to read this book. Recommend that to everybody.
Actually, Rabbi Alan Liu's stuff, Alava Shalom, now that he's passed away, a lot of his work is really quite good on many levels. He wrote a book on meditation. Mm-hmm. He himself being a Buddhist master as well. So an interesting integration of traditions there. His stuff is great pretty much every which way you look at it.
Do you have, let's say, one bit of advice for, let's say somebody is celebrating the holidays for the first time this year? What's something they should know going in, or what's some sort of intention they should have going into this to help them to have the most meaningful experience?
My advice would be to remember it's going to be okay. It's really long. It might be liturgy you don't really know. You're not alone. Most people don't know it either. But it gives you a chance to really meditate on being in a prayer space. If synagogue is the way you're celebrating that holiday, or any of those holidays. If you're fasting on Yom Kippur, it's going to be okay. If you've never fasted before, it will be over. You're not going to keel over. It might be hard, and you might decide this year you didn't finish, but next year you'll do better. Rosh Hashanah is a chance to start over. And then lastly, I would say with Sukkot, it can kind of come a little complicated with shaking things and building things, but it's going to be okay. Every year is a little bit different, and it's a chance to try something new. So that would be my advice. And then in general, always bring a short book to read at the synagogue.
And nobody will get upset with you if you're not following along in the prayer book for every single page.
Exactly. I won't.
I've literally never seen a rabbi yell at somebody for reading a book while in the synagogue.
Exactly. I won't even tell your rabbi. It's fine.
Right. And I'll just add to that. If you can't build a sukkah, find a sukkah. Don't let this part of the experience go. It's once a year. There are all these weird huts built around the area. If you can't make one of those huts, get in one of those huts and have some of that experience that Rabbi Jeremy Marquise here has had, and other people as well, and see why it's sort of like the secret favorite holiday that a lot of people don't appreciate yet. So try that out. Jeremy, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I really appreciate it, buddy.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you to your listeners for enjoying the holidays to come.
That was a dope. I talk to Rabbi Marquise about once a week. We collaborate on various digital rabbinical adventures. So I know he's a cool dude. I just wanted you to know that too. And I hope you got something out of that. I know I certainly did. But before we finish today, I want you to hear from one more rabbi. And if you've been with us from the beginning, you've already heard from Rabbi Adam Greenwald, who is the director of the Miller Introduction to Judaism program at American Jewish University here in sunny Southern California. But his program has affiliates all over the country. And from my personal experience, it is far and away the best Introduction to Judaism curriculum I've ever seen. I teach this class. I've taught this class 3 times the whole way through. I'm about to start again here in the fall. So, hey, if you're curious and if you're in the LA area and you want to take this class with me, hit me up on an email or on social or something, and I'll tell you how to sign up for that. But enough about me, enough about the class. I want you to hear what Rabbi Adam Greenwald's favorite fall holiday is and why. Here we go. Rabbi Adam Greenwald, you've been on this show before. I am excited and maybe a little surprised that you're back, but I'm really grateful to talk with you today.
I just want to have friends.
Well, I think we're off to a good start. Now, immediately out of the gate, you may make some enemies here. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Which one is your favorite?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
Solidly.
I'm not going to tell the other ones. Are you sure you're going to stick with that answer?
I'm going to stick with that answer. I do enjoy Yom Kippur. Not that I particularly enjoy fasting, as everything about my figure suggests. But I really appreciate the day of being able to focus on nothing but doing the meaningful spiritual work of the holiday. It feels like a meditation retreat. Like it's restorative in a lot of ways.
What is the job that Yom Kippur gets done for you? I mean, how are you different at the end of the day?
So Yom Kippur is an opportunity to shut out all of the distracting voices of the world and to just try to listen to the voice inside. And I do a very good job of keeping myself very busy and very disconnected from my own internal voice. And having a day that's just about prayer and meditation and song and silence gives me an opportunity to take a deep look inside and get a sense of what's really going on.
Now, you mentioned a retreat. Is this something that you take on sort of personally and privately? Do you do it with a community? Mix of both? What's better?
So I am not a synagogue rabbi. I run the Intro to Judaism program, as you well know, and that leaves me during the High Holy Days sometimes in work mode. Sometimes I fill in for congregations. Other times I get to just be a Jew in the pew. And I like working Rosh Hashanah very much. Yom Kippur, if I can help it, I don't work. Because Yom Kippur, I really want to be able to take that time, even in the midst of community, to just focus in and get quiet. And that's much harder to do when you're standing up in front of 1,000 people.
But can you do it standing amidst 1,000 people?
I can, and in fact, I find it really helpful. You know, if I was just home and told, stay home and think about your life for the day, that would work for probably about 20 minutes, and then I would want to know what's on television, or there would be chores to do around the house, or I would just fall asleep. Being together with a group of people who are all engaged in the same sort of reflection and introspection together is sort of like a support group, right? Like we all are each other's accountability to actually do the work. So I would not find Yom Kippur nearly as meaningful if it was just me hungry and alone. Yom Kippur for me really takes the whole community together, all of us doing our own thing, but doing it side by side.
I agree with you 100%. Only I think instead of looking for chores, I would probably just hit the fridge.
The fast would not last long.
I'm a firm believer in the ethics of transparency and visibility. And so I think I need that support to say, we're all in this together. And the bodily suffering that I'm trying to separate myself as being shared by many people in the room. And so that kind of gives me a little bit of strength to surpass that and set it aside and focus on the kind of spiritual work that you're talking about. Now, do you have any memories of Yom Kippur as a child? Like, when did you start fasting for Yom Kippur?
So I remember starting to fast for Yom Kippur after my bar mitzvah, and that was a big deal about now I need to be doing this. My strongest memories of Yom Kippur as a child actually aren't about services, they're about setting up. So I grew up in a 35-family synagogue that met in the social hall of a Lutheran church.
Okay.
And
so 35 families sounds like a lot of families if you had them all over for a barbecue. But as synagogue sizes go,
it's teensy weensy.
It's teensy weensy. Okay, that's a technical term, everyone.
So we were this tiny little DIY community, and that's do it yourself. That's not a denomination of Judaism. Some people are trying to. You do you. Every year before the high holidays, we would get together the day before to set up the big room, because most of the time we were just in the little fireside room that they had with 20 chairs for all the people who came for Shabbat services. But for the high holy days, we would get 100 or even 200 people. And so I have these very strong memories of setting up Bachman Hall at the Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Los Alamitos and getting it all ready for the high holy days, in the sense that like something big was coming, and by stacking and setting up the chairs, we were helping to make it possible. I still consider stacking and setting up chairs a relatively essential part of my spiritual preparation for any big deal. So if anybody needs help schlepping around some chairs or tables, I find it spiritually uplifting.
Okay, not just chair uplifting, and that works for weddings as well. But the uplifting practice of helping create space for other people. And I love that. And something that we've done in my synagogue in our Hebrew school is partially pragmatic. I enlist the eldest students to swap out all the regular prayer books for the High Holidays prayer books, which is a lot of manual labor. But if you've got a lot of kids making a game out of it, they're getting your work done very cheaply. But they're also sort of having that experience that they may not appreciate as much as I do of creating holy space for other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a remarkable thing to have encountered at a young age.
Best justification for child labor I've ever heard.
Okay, I'm going to get phone calls. This is the internet. I don't know if people do phone calls anymore. So let's go to the also ran holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. So who comes in second after Yom Kippur? I won't tell them. I may tell them.
Sukkot is beautiful, right? Where Yom Kippur is all seriousness and deep personal introspection. Sukkot is just love and joy and light and gratitude. And sitting out in a fort built in the backyard, and inviting in friends and being together and celebrating. So I don't know what it says about my psychological state that I give the day of deep and often depressing self-reflection first before the day of joy and light, but so it goes. Sukkot is a close second to Yom Kippur.
Right. No, it's actually quite common. And you've sat on a Beit Din for conversion. I've sat on a Beit Din for conversion from time to time. And when we ask the question often, what's your favorite holiday? Sorry, fall holidays. Passover is number one as far as people's favorite holiday that they're attracted to. Yom Kippur is usually the second answer.
Close on its heels, yeah.
After that. And it has so much to do with whether a person is an extrovert or an introvert, whether they're more introspective or community oriented. And so I'll say Yom Kippur is a perfectly acceptable answer. And I also love your framing of Sukkot as like the tree fort holiday or like it's the holiday for people who love to make little forts out of couch cushions if you grew up in an apartment and sort of make it, kind of playing house out of the things that you have.
Sukkot is absolutely the hokey pokey holiday. That's actually how I teach it to my students. It's the hokey pokey holiday. Usually with a holiday, we're asked to just go a little bit in, right? Come show up at the synagogue, sit down and say the prayers out of the book. But for the 8 days of Sukkot, we're supposed to actually build something with our hands, not something Jews are generally known for. And we're supposed to go all the way in. You're supposed to put your whole self in.
And then you shake it all about.
Right? We have this weird set of symbols, the lulav and the etrog, these collection of branches and this funny oversized lemon that we're supposed to shake in every direction to symbolize God's presence all around us. And what do? We put our whole self in and we shake it all about.
I love it.
Just like building pillow forts, just like doing the hokey pokey, there's something very childlike and very wonderful about Sukkot.
Now, I never thought I would ask a rabbi this, but is there anything at all that's redeeming about Rosh Hashanah? Come on, give me something. Give me something that's nice about Rosh Hashanah after you've trashed it so roundly.
Oh my God. You told me you wouldn't tell Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is wonderful. Rosh Hashanah is big meals with family and friends. Rosh Hashanah is the start of that powerful and introspective liturgy. Rosh Hashanah is the call of the shofar. Rosh Hashanah is a great holiday. I'll just say it doesn't reach the high spiritual heights maybe of Yom Kippur, and it's not the full and complete embrace of community out in the garden like Sukkot. Rosh Hashanah is, in a lot of ways, I think, a preparation actually for both of those experiences, right? Rosh Hashanah blasting the shofar to say, get your act together because Yom Kippur is coming, right? Rosh Hashanah is gathering for 2 days of meals as a little foretaste of 2 weeks later gathering together for 8 days of meals. It's the coming attractions.
There are 8 days of meals?
Jews do enjoy getting together around a good meal.
Okay. And that's why I've shifted from video into podcasting. So thank you very much for all this. And I'm sure you'll get angry letters. I'll get angry letters from the fans of Rosh Hashanah out there. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes you got to stick your neck out. You got to take a position. But before we go, I want to ask you, do you have any favorite books that you recommend to people if they're learning about the holidays, or a favorite Yom Kippur book, or whether it's personally for you a favorite, or also something you recommend to other people who are just learning about this stuff?
The book that I return to almost every year before Yom Kippur is a book written by Simon Wiesenthal called The Sunflower. Simon Wiesenthal was a survivor of Auschwitz, went on to be a Nazi hunter, a prosecutor of Nazi war criminals. And he wrote this really incredible book that's in 2 parts. The first part of the book is a story that really happened to him when he was in Auschwitz. And I'll tell you just the short version of the story. Simon Wiesenthal was on a work detail in Auschwitz when an SS guard comes up to him and says, "Come with me." And he doesn't know if he's being brought to his death, but he's marched away from the work detail and brought to the hospital barrack. At the hospital barrack, he's brought into the room of a Nazi officer who is laying in bed and clearly dying. And the Nazi officer says to a young Simon Wiesenthal, "I asked them to bring me a Jew because I want to confess before I die." He said, "I need to tell you some truly horrible things that I did, and I need the forgiveness of a Jew." And so I'm not going to tell you what Simon Wiesenthal does, because I think you should buy the book. But he writes up this narrative after he survives, and he gains quite a bit of fame as a prosecutor of Nazi war criminals. And so he's well known enough that he sends this manuscript around to faith leaders all around the world. And the second half of the book are the letters back to him. What should you do? Should you forgive? Should you not forgive? And he gets letters back from the Pope, and from the chief rabbi of Israel, and from the Dalai Lama. And the second half of the book is just this incredible symposium of teachers reflecting on the question of forgiveness. The subtitle of the book is, it's The Sunflower, on the Limits and Possibilities of Forgiveness. And I come back to that book and read a few of the responses almost every year as part of my preparation for Yom Kippur, to think about what it really means to do tshuva, what's possible in the world of tshuva, what's not possible in the world of tshuva, and to reflect in my own life about the spaces in which I offer forgiveness and how I hold those spaces. Can't recommend that book highly enough.
Rabbi Adam Greenwald, thank you very much for this tour of the high holidays, with apologies to Rosh Hashanah. The food is nice, and I like the ram horn, but I'm ever grateful to have you on the show.
Apples dipped in honey are just really cloying.
We've got to stop right there. That's perfect. Hero, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It's been my honor, my delight to share with you, my friends and my teachers, to share with you their personal stories about their own memories of the holidays, their own favorite holiday. I have to ask, why is Rosh Hashanah getting no love here? Now, I imagine it's because it's sort of the first of a series of 3 super big holidays, right? It's the introduction to the Yamim Norim, the season of awe, the 10 days of repentance. It's the first time you're getting together with a bunch of people, perhaps for the whole year, to celebrate these holidays together, to begin your activity of tshuva, of self-reflection and self-improvement, of making apologies where you need to, of forgiving people where you need to. It's the beginning. Right. And then you kind of escalate spiritually to this personal introspective day of Yom Kippur, this long fast day, this day of kind of dispensing with physical needs, of focusing on your own soul, your own relationship with God. And as we'll talk more about this in the 31-day challenge, that you're really trying to experience what it's like to be an angel, where you are being a pure spirit, not of physical needs of food or intimacy or bathing, but you are entirely focused on your own soul and your own relationship with God. And it's heavy. And after this heaviness, you get to celebrate Sukkot. You get to hang out in like a little fort that you build, a little tent that you build, a little temporary structure that you may have the opportunity to build in your backyard. And if you don't, that's cool too. You can always go to a synagogue, or you can go to another friend's house and experience that. And you've heard a lot about that with these rabbis, about what's so great about doing that. I personally enjoy it quite a bit, and I highly recommend it. And in our 31-day challenge, you'll learn more about Rosh Hashanah. You'll learn more about Yom Kippur. You'll learn about how to build a sukkah of your own and why you would want to do that in the first place. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but totally worthwhile. So that brings me to my last thought of the day, and that is talking again about this challenge. If you are interested in learning everything you can about the Jewish holidays in the fall, before you experience them, before you enter the building, before you even call the building to, see when's the right time to enter, I want you to be prepared. I want you to have the best possible experience there, which means knowing as much as you can before you go in, because that's been my best experience, and I want you to have that too. So if this is something you want for yourself, I highly recommend you go to Jewcurious.show/challenge, and you'll see a little website put together by our friends at King Sumo who help manage this. Enter your email address, and immediately you will get a downloadable calendar of all the holidays for the entire year of 5779, according to the Jewish calendar. And you'll understand a little bit more about that too if you take this challenge. So you'll get a calendar of holidays for the year with an explanation of where they come from, what they're all about, what they can do for you. Get that right away. And then you will get daily notifications each day for all 31 days in August. So if you're concerned about getting an email on Shabbat and whether you're going to miss something, if observing Shabbat in a way that precludes you from reading email is important to you, read it after. I'm not sending them on Shabbat. I put them in a computer and the computer sends them. Right. So I'm doing this in a way that's consistent with my Shabbat practice, and you are perfectly welcome to do this in a way that is consistent with your Shabbat practice. And then both of us catch up afterwards, and then we wind up learning a ton together. And then at the very end of the 31-day challenge, we are going to have kind of an opportunity drawing for a giveaway of 3 sets of a starter Jewish library that is 6 books that I recommend to people who are new to Judaism or coming back after a while to get connected with the meaning of the holidays, the meaning and the how-to of Jewish prayer, and recipes. There's a cookbook in there as well. So if you're up for this challenge, I tell you, it's a challenge for me to put out videos every day for 31 days, but it's worth it to help you have the same experience of the holidays that I do. So if you're up for this challenge, go to Jewcurious.show/challenge, join us, and you'll get an email every single day with a link to a brand new video. And we are going to have a blast, my friend. I think you can tell I'm excited about this. I hope you're excited about this. But if not, that's cool. I'm excited enough for the both of us. So I'll just close by saying thank you, Hero, again, for listening to this podcast, for listening to the voices of my teachers, hearing their own personal experience. I sincerely hope that it helps make your personal experience better. It's been my joy to share this with you today and my joy to learn with you continuously. Until next week, Hero, peace.
Thanks for listening to the Jewcurious Show at www.jewcurious.show.